So what are we doing? We're going to watch this video from Josh Strife Hayes, and it is why old MMOs feel better.
Many long-time MMO players fondly reminisce about the days gone when MMOs were far less optimized than they are now. Can giving the player a less optimized, less immediately fun experience actually result in them remembering the game more fondly?
What do you guys think? So this is something we've hit on quite a bit. Yes, yup. Gumpopo said no.
The answer is both yes and no.
Yes and no. You're both correct and incorrect. Tinfoil Hat says disagree that difficult things are unpleasant. But I think he says they can be unpleasant. It's not necessarily to say that all difficult things are unpleasant, but then again, there are those difficult things that we do and sometimes really enjoy. Like if you were to ask me, do you enjoy working out? Or when he was talking about this stuff earlier, so many of the times I was just thinking about like training jujitsu over the years, especially at the beginning where it was just like horrific, right? But I've got so many good memories of, those different, the growth that comes from that. But man, there are so many days where I was on the way to the gym, or it's the same thing like working out or whatever. It's, do I really want to do this today? I don't want to do this today. Oh my God, it's going to suck. Every run I do, every run, I've learned that the first mile always sucks. I'm 47, so like I have to actually, remind myself of the fact that like the first mile sucks. It's always a random pain, some weird shit, and then after a mile, I get warmed up and go. And it's kind of like that. I've always felt that way about a number of things where it's like, oh man, I don't want to do this today. And then, after I do it, I'm like, oh man, that was so good. So you had a friend who's a manifestation of that. He absolutely loathed every game he played for thousands of hours. Yeah, I mean, there was a saying in the army that, and I'll clean it up a little bit. A complaining soldier is a happy soldier. Gunpopo said, you think making the grind fun makes the reward less valuable, but it's not like Minecraft, for example. No. I think you can make something fun and have it be valuable, but there's something to be said for certain personality types. And again, I don't think this is for everybody, but they enjoy the result of something that was a challenge or distinct time investment, and partially because they know other people won't do it. Adversity creates memorable experiences. You don't remember the mundane days. Correct. And Nick said, and it varies from game to game and what kind of mechanics and systems are involved. But yeah, more tedious and unpolished doesn't have to be absolutely awful gameplay, especially if there's ways of overcoming some of this via player and social interaction.
Older games had a lot of adversity within them. With older MMOs, this wasn't a major problem for player retention because the players simply didn't have many other places to go. But as more MMOs were made,
I don't know that I agree with that 100% though. That comes up a lot, like the idea that there weren't a lot of MMOs back in the day. So if you didn't like it, whatever, you'd still deal with it. There are a lot of people that were coming in. They're coming in from other games. They're playing multiplayer death matches or whatever. They could go back to those games, and there was almost a steady like stream of MMOs coming out in the early days of MMOs up until some of the conveniences started getting added in. I don't know that the not a lot of choices thing is necessarily accurate. There were a ton of games to play. There were more multiplayer and co-op games coming online at the time. There were plenty of MMOs, and each one was finding ways to kind of one up the other, all the way up until WoW came out, right? So I don't know that there was like this huge gap. If anything, when we were looking, because we would see it in our concurrent user counts, and then we didn't really see it in our sub counts, but you would always see dips when the next either MMO came out, or some big game came out, or an expansion came out for another MMO or whatever. So I don't think it's as much as people were just sort of trapped. I think they generally enjoyed it, or if they didn't, they'd already churned. So maybe I'm overstating his statement on people leaving, but essentially, I remember there was a lot of things coming together at once, like for us. And he's speaking about more than just like EQ. Rev, I was about to say, So you said he needs to say the most players. Sounds like his points are all about chasing the most money. What we found was we were adding these sort of like convenience elements in EQ, not because, well, it wound up being experimentation to see if we could accomplish other things, right? Like, so adding a graveyard in EQ during pop was less about people complaining about not getting their corpses because we put it in raids first. It was more about us wanting to be able to make certain types of raids that potentially could reset. And we wanted corpses out of the way. We didn't want the corpse run potentially re-triggering the raid or keeping people in there. We thought we could potentially make more difficult raids if we could get corpses out of there. It's like, all right, so you've wiped, potentially start to get, you know, after a certain amount of time, instead of you going in and just rewiping, it's like, get the trash out of the way and let someone come in and try to do it that could potentially do it. The whole plane of knowledge thing, honestly, you know, and I know people keep remembering this differently, but hop onto any TLP and tell me what those servers kind of look like in terms of low-end population. We just looked at the numbers, and what we had was people coming into MMOs for the first time, and they were basically empty in all of the old zones. So there was no wizard or druid porting people around, right? Like, it just didn't exist. And so it was like, how do we consolidate players into one spot so that we have player friction? Basically, let's just make that a center hub so it's got utility to get you to the cities if you did want to go to the other cities, or if your friend made a dwarf and you made whatever, a barbarian, you could get together faster and play, because it was more just a condition of the population spreading out and being stratified at the time, right? So some of that was put in. But I would say the thing that I was thinking about as he was as he was talking about this morning, there is the point though of one of the reasons why we changed the game that much was because we were still trying to bring new players in, and we didn't really have opportunity to like sit down and basically take the time needed to really analyze the problem and look for a different solution. Zoidberg asked, instead of making plane of knowledge, do you think there should have been a server consolidation? It wouldn't have fixed the problem. So it wouldn't have fully fixed the problem, and I believe it would have created other problems, right? Because we would have had to do a mass server consolidation, which the servers at the time we still had 450,000 subs. So it was still, at the time, our subscriber base was as big as it had, ever been. I think it capped out like 450,000 to 500,000. But all of those players were distributed so far away from content, and there's no utility in the cities. There's nothing really pulling you back to the starting cities. So yeah, we could have consolidated everything, which would have pissed off all the high-end guilds. It would have basically made it so that there's probably even, like impossible conflict over certain things. So it would have been a massive disruption to the player base that was established, and it wouldn't have solved the problem for the low end people. And so, I mean, I guess you could we do an inverted pyramid consolidation or something? We could not allow, I think we did like recommended servers or something, right? Like, please go to this server. I've worked on MMOs since then that have had better automation and like putting new players into like basically load balancing in a sense. Yeah. So that's kind of what we were facing at the time. And so it wasn't, I guess I'm contradicting myself. We were doing that stuff to create a better experience for new customers who have never had the experience before. But the better experience was basically a recreation of the original experience that the old customers had had. We weren't necessarily trying to dumb the game down. Plane of knowledge solves a problem that should have never existed. Yes, it's true. In theory, the old world should have always retained its value, and players would have always been available in those areas for new players to experience. I mean, I think that's one solution. I always wondered, instead of making new content in the expansion, making new content within the existing world, like a Fortnite season. So that's another great point. But the mandate from management was that we needed to make expansions, because expansions could go on shelves. Expansions maintained, so box expansions put a box on the Best Buy shelf. That makes Best Buy happy because they get their cut. And so if we want to put an EQ2 box on the Best Buy shelf later, or a DC Universe Online box on the Best Buy shelf, then we need to give them an EverQuest expansion box, or maybe 2 a year that they get their cut from, to sort of, maintain that relationship. And that was what was controversial about Legacy of Akasha. There was no box that went on their shelves, and they were kind of like, hey, what's going on with this? There's that sort of understanding, when we're sitting at E3, we're doing demos and stuff at E3, the vice president of sales would come in with the people from these brick and mortar shops to show them all the cool stuff that's going to go on their shelves to make them money, right? Because we're there to make them money just as much as we're there to make us money, right? And for us, not getting all of the money from an expansion was fine, because we'd sell, even if you sell 2 expansions a year and you get 100% sort of uptake on it or whatever, we're still making all of our money off of the subscribers. Mandates were probably so frustrating to work around. I mean, but it's a job, right? Like that's if you don't own the company and you don't own all of the company, then there's mandates. And so yeah, that's driving a lot of it. And so instead of going, hey, EverQuest is making $80 to $90 million a year with just the subscription, right? And you can take operating expenses out of that, and it's still a shitload of money, unless your operating expenses are basically, unless you're paying for a company of 500, 7 studios or 5 studios or whatever it was. So if that money was just going back into EQ for the most part, then I think all sorts of stuff. And I think there's a lot of hindsight as well, right? Like if we knew that the game was going to be around for 20 years and blah, 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 then they probably would have invested differently. And then it could have been more of a investment in sort of some of the stuff that we were doing with like the zone revamps and things of that nature and some of the events. If we think that's the right route, then that's a benefit of hindsight, right? So that's what we're doing now. Bit of a tangent. But yeah, what was EQ's planned lifespan? 3 years? My understanding from back then, and then the understanding that I think we've arrived at from having the different guests come on, it was not planned for more than a year. So Kunark was kind of oh crap, we need to add more to this. If you go to the Kevin McPherson interview on my YouTube, or actually I think I've got a link there. So if you go to the Kevin McPherson interview, is basically the way he explained it was that the team was like, oh shit, we need to keep this thing going. Because the original idea I thought was they said if they get like 60 to, it was like, I've heard between like 30 or 40 to 60,000 subs for a year, then the game's profitable and we're done. Then we make a new game. Because they didn't, I think, understand the longevity there. So it was something like that. So the cool thing was EQ was extremely profitable almost immediately, right? Like it was extremely profitable straight out of the gate. So it was like money hats for and investment into all sorts of other projects, and the Variant Racing team line of parking spaces right outside the building. We wound up buying like the whole cul-de-sac and shit in San Diego, and it's just rapid growth. And that was only over the course of a couple of years. We're constantly growing. And then after constantly growing for a few years, then we were constantly having rolling layoffs. But yeah, so wild to think they expected EQ to be a one-off. I mean, I guess there was just, I don't know. It's weird because it's not like there weren't muds in other, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's weird. But so Kunark wasn't planned per that discussion, and Velius was just a continuation of that same thing of like, oh, we need more after Kunark. Is that when they dug up the street and installed new cable lines like they ever raised? Oh, I wasn't there for that. I don't know. Somebody probably mentions it in one of the interviews.
Then the minimaps, teleport spells, fast travel, and icons and quest helpers and auto run came along because players were leaving the game before even finding the quests due to the difficulty of the process, and it had to be made easier to increase player retention, or the players would leave for a game which was doing it again.
So this gets into the, and I don't know that my point of view is necessarily the right one, or that I've got the right answer on this, but this is something I've thought about for quite a while. The idea that every player needs to be retained, and not having kind of a good idea in mind and potentially good metrics in mind for what constitutes success, and then realizing that there can be a clear marker of success, that just because you go past that marker does not then mean that you have to keep raising the bar with regards to like financial success or player base size or whatever. It's almost like if you say we need to have 30,000 subscribers, and then we're good, very successful, right? So we have a small game, we have to have 30,000 subscribers, and that actually puts us in a nice spot where there's profit, blah, blah, blah. I'm just grabbing that number. So if that's kind of been the plan, what I've seen happen at companies is they go, okay, that's our target. We need to have 30,000 subscribers. And so then if you miss that, if you get 10,000 subscribers, then it's very easy to kind of look and go, oh shit, something's not right. Something is wrong, and we need to basically figure out why there's that delta and see how we can close that gap, right? On the flip side, I think it's just as easy to screw up a studio if you plan for 30,000 subscribers and all of a sudden you hit 50, because when that happens, I think people start going, oh shit, look at us, and break out the money hats and don't necessarily think, all right, what is a responsible way to deal with the success that we're seeing that is above what our target was. And what winds up happening is we go, oh, okay, we planned for 30, we hit 50. So let's go out and buy all the things that when we were getting ready to go, we're very lean, and we're like, oh shit, we're very budget conscious, and everything's line item, like, oh man, we've got to be careful because we don't have cash. And then all of a sudden we get that money. It's like it's kind of like the people that win the lottery, the various like reports or videos or whatever, is so and so won $20 million at the Mega Millions in Tallahassee, Florida. Let's check in on him a year later and see where he is now. Oh, I spent all the money, right? It's like there's this, what I've seen happen firsthand at least a couple times. And I don't want to get too specific, but what I see happen is that first game actually outpaces the original measures of success. And then I think there's a bit of like ego or whatever. It's like, oh shit, we planned for 30, we got 50, we can clearly get 70 or 100. Let's push. All right. And so changes start being made, money starts getting spent. Inevitably, the studio will go from the 30 people that made it to 50 people all of a sudden. Some of it's justified because it's like, okay, well, we need to have more customer service or something, right? But that's not always the case. What winds up happening is everybody on our team on M&M wears like 10 hats. And so all of a sudden, and instead of Nick wearing 10 hats and Goblin wearing 10 hats and Pattis wearing 10 hats and Zukin and Ali and everybody, what we go is, I'm going to take these hats off now that we've got the cash to do it. And we're going to give we're going to get 9 more people. I'm going to wear 1 hat, or we're going to get like 5 more people and I'm only going to wear the 5 hats or whatever. And sometimes that's good, right? Because like people have been overloaded or whatever. Now all of a sudden you go from having a 30-person team to like an 80-person team or 70-person team, which then so now you have a dilution of the company culture that made the game. People start to get more siloed. People start to get more cliquish. You need a layer of middle management. Even with 30 people, there's middle management to some degree, right? But then all of a sudden, it's just like at 50 people, so let's say 60 people. If you made a game with 30, which we're 11 people, so 3 times our size, I can only imagine communication issues and all of that stuff. And then it's like, Goblin, sorry, you can't touch that anymore. You got to focus strictly on concept art. You can't have input here, or you can't touch that, or blah, 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 right? Like, so there's all that shit that winds up happening. And then it becomes like this beast that has to feed itself. And so what winds up happening is then you need more subs. And it's sort of self-perpetuating. And the way to get more subs is to retain more people, or to go out and get even more people that aren't necessarily the ones that were originally part of that core that like sort of discovered it. And I think that has a really sort of underrated significant factor on what winds up happening with some of the companies. And then on the flip side, there's just this understanding more and more, I would say in the last 15 years, last 12 years or this belief, not understanding, that in order to be competitive straight out of the gate, we have to make a game of a certain scale. Otherwise, it's not even going to be worth putting out there, right? Like if it doesn't have a couple million subscribers or several million, most of the time an unrealistic number of million, if we don't have 5 to 10 million subs, which is crazy, it's so much money, then it's not worth pursuing. It's not worth investing in, right? Because we want to start seeing like returns of a certain scale immediately. We don't want to grow this thing for 5 years or 10 years. Rather than a company taking a long-term view or investors taking a long-term view and going, "Hey, if we give you the money to get this thing out in the next 3 years with a smaller team, it's lower risk for us, blah blah blah. Do you think it's feasible that you could grow this subscriber base, this community to be, 10 times the size over the next 5 years or something of that nature?" Which if it was true that like EQ was looking for, let's split the difference. Say if they had 50,000 subs, if that was the target, 50,000 subs in a year and they're good, and then they have 500,000 subs within 5 years of that happening, then right, like that's not a bad target, and that's a decent return on somebody's investment, because if they're only having to invest a few million to get it out the door, and then that game's making 5-6 million a month sort of at that peak, there's a decent amount of profit there, especially if the company's built around the idea of managing that profit in sort of a responsible way and not going, okay, well, how do we make all of the games now to try to get all of the players? So you don't need 6 or 7 studios within a 4-year period or a 3-year period. That's insane. Like, how do you even manage that? Like, how do you even maintain any semblance of a company culture? Why can't more people just make a good game that's profitable instead of having to keep chasing? There's nothing wrong with profit or chasing money. It's the question is, are there ways to chase the money in a healthy manner, both for the company and for the product and for the community, right? We tend to look at like a World of Warcraft and then forget about the 10 years of the IP being built up prior to that massive hit. So the thing I look at is, can we build reasonably successful products that establish IP for us, that we nurture over the course of 5 or 10 years, so that then at some point they're so beloved that we can do really, really incredible things with them based on the situation at the time. Warcraft was being built up, and obviously done well, hugely successful in their own right. Each of those products, like a Diablo, a Warcraft, Starcraft, all of these things are contributing to each other as well, because they're contributing to Blizzard as a brand. It's like, wow, these guys make really wonderful games that each one is strong and iconic IP that allowed them to make the game that was so successful. Then when the situation became MMOs, right? It's like, oh shit, MMOs. Cool. Let's make an MMO out of this thing that is already super beloved and reinforced by Diablo, reinforced by the success of StarCraft, right? That are all feeding into the brand. But that's kind of that's a long-term investment. That's a patience game. And I think that's more typically found. It kind of goes into a different mindset. Like, remember back in the day when like somebody would build a business because they wanted to hand it down to their grandkid or their great grandkid. We're going to build this business, and it's going to be a family business. We're going to run it our way, and we're going to do things that make us take pride in being associated with this business because it is our family name. And I think it's just such a different dynamic when it's, hey, I've got a startup. Can I get seed money from these 5 different, I don't even know, like the XXX Vanguard, BlackRock, whatever, seed, incubator, but it's just, hey, I've got a startup and I need cash and we're going to pursue growth. And so then we're going to turn on the money spigot and you're going to get 10x your return, right? Like the sort of startup bullshit that's out there, as opposed to like, how do we build this thing up? Like, from, I think I said like Vanguard, XXX. I don't know why there's a XXX in there. I guess we're also getting porno money. I don't know. It's weird. Are we getting funded by BlackRock? No. But it was interesting. Like, Jagex got bought by the Carlyle Group. They're owned by right? I think they're wholly owned by Carlyle, which is interesting. Look them up. Money's got to come from somewhere. All right. The money does have to come from somewhere, or the value that the money is meant to provide has to come from somewhere. So if you look at you can sit and look at what we've been doing with regards to everybody just pitching in their own time, and us bootstrapping it. You can associate a value on that time, right? And so essentially the sweat equity that's gone into this thing, it's worth money. It's why we didn't have to go out and borrow $1 million to get to where we're at in the first year and a half. The approach can be people pitching in and building it the way we're doing it. It can be, somebody's got the cash to get the ball rolling, and then you can find reasonable investors with people that are sort of long term in their view on the company. In theory, I don't think it's as possible these days. I think we've burned too many bridges with regards to crowdfunding and things of that nature. There's probably different angles that could be taken there. We haven't done it just because we know what the vibe is, and we also feel an ethical responsibility for showing you that there's a game and going, okay, we want to make more of this, but there really needs to be a game there that is going to be consistent with what you would basically, a game that is consistent with what it's ultimately going to be before we'd even consider something like that. I want to be careful how I say it, but what I mean is, it's not a demo that's made out of like smoke and mirrors to then go, hey, now give us cash, and then we're going to go back and actually rebuild this thing from scratch in a way that works, right? Like all those things have to be avoided, I think. So anyway, I feel like I've gotten way off course, but you can watch the whole thing uninterrupted if you go to Josh's YouTube, which I'm sure you are already subscribed to. It's not a vertical slice, it's an actual game. Well, it's a vertical slice and an actual game, Kimmery, is the goal. It's a vertical slice of the content of the game. So it's a vertical slice of the game, but it's the actual functional vertical slice. It's not a demo of a vertical slice, or it's not the bottom, it's not the crust of the vertical slice of the cake, if that makes sense. We're making it in a way, like I think I showed you, we even have like bug reporting tool that was just added, which I don't know if the team knows why I get so excited about that, but it's again, thinking about all of the things that we would need and not taking them for granted. It's like a live service. BDC Retro said you basically want to build a mini version fully featured of the final game. Yeah, like that. The bug tool will text Ali directly, which is nice. I don't know that that's true.
The lack of quest markers on your minimap, or indeed the lack of a detailed map at all, or the lack of fast travel, means you now face adversity of talking to every NPC, finding a quest, memorizing the world, learning the lay of the land.
And I think, these are also just different design choices. Like, there's nothing that says you need to have a minimap. There's nothing that says an NPC needs to have a, indication that they are a quest giver. Like, those are strictly just design choices.
Most players simply don't have a very long attention span, or a great deal of patience to deal with failure.
He says most players. That's the thing, though. You don't need all the players, especially if you look at the total addressable market these days, right? Like, I think about this a lot. If anybody can find a big flaw in the logic, please, I'm not bullshitting, let me know. Like, the total addressable market in a world in which 220, I think, 205, we can look it up in a minute, like, 200 million kids play Roblox. And that's just kids playing Roblox. Assuming that every one of the like 160 million monthly active users on Minecraft are the exact same kids that are playing Roblox. And this was a couple years ago. 225 million in December 2021 for Roblox. Yeah, that's a significant number of players, right? Like, and so imagine 10% of them decide that they want to play WoW. Right, only 10% of them, for whatever reason. It's only 10%. Everybody else, half of them, they stop gaming when they hit like 15, 16. They churn out of it because you can age out. Like, I guess they do have a problem with like players aging out of Roblox. But even that's interesting. Like, one of the biggest problems with Roblox, I guess I might be talking on my ass. If you work for Roblox, you can tell me, or if you read the news more recently than I have. But when they were talking about IPOing and stuff like that, one of their bigger risks was that their player base ages out. Where do they go? It could be that 90% of them just stop playing games entirely because they want to date, or they want to, work at a fast food restaurant or whatever, or spend all their time becoming a professional YouTuber. But that 10% still solid. And there's new kids going into that funnel every year as they're churning out, right? Like, that's a decent number just on that one front. That's not counting any of the people that have, outside of that, group, that are a bit older or have played other games. Most of you are, I think, in your 30s and up. The total addressable market, when you look at a subset of these various groups that are potentially interested or included in what could be sort of cobbled together as a total addressable market for say MMO, generically speaking, It's just massive compared to where it used to be. And so I think that, in my opinion, the challenge has actually been more on the front end of the problem and not the back end of the problem. The challenge, the problem has been more on designing or defining like a product in a business that is essentially able to take a slice or sliver of that and basically leverage that to have a profitable business capable of growing. Anyway, D Loves Pudding, sorry, I saw this earlier. In your conversations regarding funding, do you feel the prevailing economic conditions might present a more difficult time generating a great deal as opposed to a good deal? In terms of funding, I don't know, because the limited conversations we've had, because we haven't been pursuing them, I think there's basically, it's not the current economic conditions haven't impacted that yet in any sort of reasonable way. And if anything, I think what we're going to find in our sector is that it's an area that is kind of it's a fallback position for a lot of folks, because when stuff gets more expensive, when people don't feel that they can go out as much, if we see either a crisis or economic contraction, I think there are certain services that people look at and finally realize the value of their money. So if it's $15 a month, sure, it's $15 a month, but it's $15 a month for a experience with a significant amount of content to be absorbed, where there's a higher degree of autonomy and like autonomy in creating content for yourself as a customer than like Netflix. You know what I mean? It's interactive, which I think has a bigger sort of, naturally has a bigger impact than just passively consuming content. It's social, which when the shit hits the fan and things are kind of shitty, these social experiences, having a place to go, are actually pretty important, right? Like, so I think that investors will recognize that. I think bigger investors may not recognize that. I think smart investors will recognize that. What we've been seeing with regards to investments, D Loves Pudding, you probably know this better than I do at this point, but what I think we've seen over the last 5 years with various mergers and acquisitions and with game investment in general is the bigger companies are looking for anything that's generating a bit of revenue and especially profit. And they're just, because I understand that they've essentially had free money to make those investments. And it's better than like it's sitting there and not getting, there's no like sort of interest on it or whatever. But instead we can buy this thing that's then going to generate a mild sort of return. The bigger companies have been gobbling up everything. I'm wondering if the problem that we've had is that there's been so much money and there's been so many big acquisitions that they really haven't had to look at like smaller investments. All of that said, I still, to me, it would be hard to find a investor that would actually be good for us, if that makes sense. Like, I think it would take a very sort of special kind of investor. Because like we've had a discussion, and if the person that we discussed it with is out there or watches this or whatever, not saying anything ill of the interaction or anything like that, but there was, we recently had a discussion and the comment was made, essentially an example was given for like a marketing spend. It was like, oh, well, for example, we could provide like a few million in marketing in return for like a 50% rev share or whatever. And to me, that's like, yeah, we wouldn't do that just because we don't want a few million in marketing. That makes no sense for us, I don't think. We've had a previous, like somebody I know in the industry that works at a big company, it also mentioned like, oh, well, there might be a deal to be had with giant corporation, but it would be essentially the deal would be like investment, and then in order to get us on a platform so that as many eyeballs could see us as possible, but the target isn't for as many eyeballs to see us as possible, and then for us to have to change our game in order to facilitate that, or in order to maximize like the KPIs as part of some deal. It's like, oh, here, we can make sure that 30 million people see you. Okay, but then what are your expectations? Like, how many of those people are we going to be expected to retain in order for this deal to be valid? And if we're expected to retain a decent portion of those 30 million, then how mainstream do we have to make the game? Okay, well, but that's not the game we're making. So why are we even having the conversation? For us, the most important thing is getting a core audience that understands what we're wanting to make, and having good, having an opportunity for us to look and see if that core audience is then capable of us grinding forward in a way where then word of mouth and less conventional sort of advertising like us. I mean, we all stream and things like that, instead of then throwing $70,000 at a streamer. D says, what I'm hearing is investors are saying what type of game they would be comfortable funding, and it sounds like it doesn't mesh well with the more almost lifestyle business with your core audience you're seeking to expand into. Yeah, I'm not shocked on. But the interesting thing is, again, like it's a very self-serving statement because we, at the end of the day, have to make a game. I think a lot of those investors are looking for a sort of a scale of return and a pace of return that then has them making riskier bets than they need to. And I know there are some companies out there that are basically trying to help indie studios get the game out. But like, and again, not to speak ill of these companies, I think it's fine for teams that want to do this. But like, there's a company that in theory we could have spoken more with or whatever, that's like, essentially we would get to make the game that we want. In theory, they would own it, and then we would get a decent sort of payout of the game that they own, that we made, right? They basically, they own it, and they help run the production, and they deal with all the adult stuff and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's a non-starter. That doesn't make sense to me. Kuro said, in the early days of MMOs, it was about player retention. It was about, will anybody play this game we love? The devs were literally rolling dice with something that was a massive passion project, just hoping to share it with enough people to keep it alive. Kuros, I think that was true in the early days, but then as soon as they started making a lot of money, it started to become a little bit more about, we started thinking, we weren't doing it in a very sophisticated manner, but we were definitely thinking more about things like retention. Nowhere, like in no way similar to the level to which that gets analyzed these days. And I do think there's a point in what you're saying with regards to, will anybody play this game we love? I've definitely seen the shift towards the attitude of game developers should not make games for themselves, right? I've heard that statement in plenty of management, in plenty of meetings with executive management, C-level management. We can't make games for ourselves. We need to identify our target customer, and then we need to dissect what makes them think, and then we need to make the game for them. Okay, and we need the team to be passionate about making that game that they're not making for themselves. So anyways, Kuros, to your point, I think we're trying to do both, right? Like, if we're going to be real about what we're doing, the team isn't dedicating their time. I don't know. I don't want to speak for the whole team, but I would say that I believe it's got to be a mix of both. The team's got to feel proud of the thing that they're working on, and want this thing that they're making to feel like it's theirs, and it's a expression of the kind of work that they want to do and the kind of game that they want to play. On the flip side, they have to also be expecting that there is an opportunity for us to be successful and have more than just like a sustenance level of success. Like, the idea is, oh, we should do better than expecting. We're modestly sort of projecting, and then we should do that in a way where we share in those profits in a way that makes it well worth our while for everything that we've invested up until then.